Welcome to another exciting edition of Near Mint Comic Radio, your local comic shop shrunk down, gamma radiated with both its parents tragically killed before its eyes, and aired live every other week, only on the Non-Productive Network, the only place that would have us. I'm your host, Frank, joined in studio as always by Ken and Pete. Hey, Ken and Pete!
Hey, how's it going?
Griebelgort.
It's actually been quite a while since we've seen Ken. Ken, how are you feeling?
Good. It's great to be back.
All right, we want to keep it comics focused, so enough with the personal drama.
I'm sorry.
We don't really care. Just keep it on the comics. Thank you very much. Pete, you've been here.
Oh yeah. I've been around. I'm still dealing with the explosive gonorrhea. But,
okay, we rank and review. Wait a minute. We rank and review comics from best to worst. That's mint, near mint, good, fair, and poor to you newbies, and try to give you some good advice. Tell you what to read and what's better to avoid.
Try and fail.
Right. So this a special episode. We're going to focus on Marvel Legacy. Marvel Legacy #1 has come out. It's been out for like about a week, I think.
Right.
Depending on when you listen to this podcast. And we are going to review this from the perspective of comic book fans from multiple eras of reading.
Yeah.
If there's an effect on that, it's going to sound tight. It's going to sound real good. If
I believe
put
you.
We put like a reverb on that, it's going to sound really cool.
But you won't.
I hope I don't forget, because then I'm going to sound like an idiot.
Marvel Legacy is it's the new thing that's happening in Marvel after Secret Empire. It's kind of like the start of a new season for Marvel Comics.
Yes,
that's the way things have been going, and it's what they call a jumping on point.
Right, the mythic jumping on point that will somehow get people to start reading comics again.
It's going to be less intimidating. You're not jumping in right in the middle of a story.
People are afraid of numbers, and if the numbers are too high, they won't pick up the book. They're too heavy with numbers.
Actually, bad point.
Well, they're going back to the original
Have you heard this? Yes.
Yeah.
With the Marvel Legacy, a lot of the Marvel books are going back to what they are referring to as the original numbering.
Right.
Which means that they are taking back from when Marvel decided to start almost everything up again with #1 issues, and they are taking those books, and however many volumes have come after that, adding up all those numbers and adding it to the total of the original numbering.
There are two kinds of comic book fans, guys. There's people who have followed that conversation, are riveted, and others who are like, what? Yeah. I got into comics, so I don't have to do math.
So basically, Thor is going from issue 15 to issue 700.
Right. Now, let's do a quick roundtable of ourselves and where we're at comic books in general.
Yeah, this is what's going to make the conversation interesting, I think, because we're all coming at it from different perspectives right now of how closely we've been following the Marvel Universe.
Right.
I personally have been reading almost nonstop. I've been reading most of the books and keeping tabs on what's going on in most of the others that I haven't been reading. Yeah, so I've been following very closely with the Marvel Universe.
Pretty consistently throughout the last through big epochs, which we will discuss briefly in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, except for a couple of years in the early 2000s. I've been reading pretty steady from 1991.
Wow. Crazy. I am a comic book fan from a young age, but I probably stopped reading about 2 or 3 years ago regularly. There were specific books I did follow and lots of stories that I try to catch up on. For example, I only just got into Miss Marvel within the last 2 years, Ms. Marvel. And, it's as a standalone. I'm not really following the big epic storylines, the plots, the big seasons that Marvel has been doing recently. I did start dipping back in, one, because, I do this podcast. So I'm a little I'm caught up with the background of what's going on, but I only started reading maybe a few issues ago as they were exiting out of their latest big,
Secret
story
Empire.
arc.
Secret Empire.
Which, again, we will describe in a bit. How about you, Ken?
I'll be honest, I haven't read a Marvel book in a long time. I think I started...
Ken, who's Thor?
Thor is the son of Odin.
No. Who's Captain America?
He used to switch plays with a guy named Don Blake.
Who?
All right. Yeah.
Going back, I think one of the last Marvel books I remember even reviewing, I think, was when Axis was going on, that big event with the Red Skull and Onslaught merged. And
oh my God, I forgot it even happened.
Yeah. because it had that much of a lasting.
And that
legacy.
whole thing just kind of started really turning me off. And then I think I was there when we reviewed the first issue of Secret Wars, and I read that, and I knew I was completely done after that. So I haven't picked a book up since. From
Right.
Little Kenny's had some event fatigue.
Right. Event fatigue is a very real thing.
It is.
In about a minute, we're going to attempt, as in, like, for the length of a minute, we're going to attempt to catch you up with as many different eras of Marvel as we can, and I'm going to ask Pete to be our guide. Ken and I are going to try to like keep you in the reins, like remind you of things like Axis, but one thing leads to another with these storylines. So where do we want to kind of start? Where's a good time for us to start this entire where Marvel has gone so
Wow, dude. That's one of those heavy pre-production kind of questions.
Isn't it, though?
Let's see. Probably best to go back to when Brian Michael Bendis really took the helm as far as crafting stories for overarching stories for Marvel, because that's when things started to get really tightly integrated.
Are we going back to, say, like the Marvel Now era a couple years back?
You know what? I was going back to...
Before that?
I was going back to the Secret War.
Okay.
Not the original 80s Secret Wars that you may have the toys from, but Bendis' Secret War, where a bunch of superheroes got drafted against their will, basically, to take over Latveria. Interesting story. That set the seeds for Civil War, where the Marvel superheroes were divided against each other.
Which I think is a great jumping on point for this podcast for listeners, because you're familiar with it from the movie, probably, even if you're just very light.
It was very similar to the Captain America Civil War movie.
Right. Hero versus hero, etc.
Yes. Then there was the Secret Invasion.
Which was when Skrulls came, and it turns out most of our heroes, or many of them, were not actually our heroes all this time. They were aliens.
Indeed. But that mostly people got better after that.
Of course.
That's right. Dark Reign was after Secret Invasion.
Because
that's where the bad guys started running everything.
Yep.
Because we didn't trust the heroes anymore, apparently.
Then we went to Siege.
Yep, Siege ended the Dark Reign, where Asgard crashed to Earth. Very strange stuff. I'm going to skip a whole mess here.
Oh, please do. World War Hulk and After Smash.
That was before that, but we're going to get rid of the whole Hammer thing.
Well, Hammer was Dark Reign.
No. The actual heroes with hammers thing.
Oh, God, where everybody was Thor?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was that. There was a thing where everybody was the Hulk.
That's right.
Now there's a thing where everybody's Venom, but that's skipping a lot. That's going on right now. Then we had the Avengers fighting the X-Men.
Oh, Avengers.
First, the Avengers and the X-Men were friends. Then they fought each other. Then the Phoenix showed up and turned a few of the X-Men into the Phoenix, and they just ruined everything. You know what? Then a bunch of stuff happened, and we got to Secret Wars.
That's right. Okay.
The new Secret Wars. Okay, so Secret Wars. I always mess up the
because it's
the number on
stupid.
that.
Marvel is really trying to confuse you.
They had
by
Secret
naming
Wars.
things so similar.
Then Secret Wars 2.
Yeah,
Then
Secret
they
War.
had the Secret War.
Yeah.
Then Secret Wars again.
Yeah. But without the word again to make it hard.
Correct.
Right.
Because Secret Wars again is going to be next summer.
Right.
Well, we had a Spider-Man in the Secret Wars at some point in there too.
Yeah, I think there's like 5 of them in the Secret Wars. Oh, God, we completely skipped Spider-Verse.
No, I know
that. We don't need that. Secret Wars basically rebooted the universe.
Right.
I'll put it that way, to sum that up. So now, basically, anything that came before that maybe doesn't count.
Right, and the purpose, I think, of Secret Wars was really to first bring Ultimate Universe into line with the rest of the Marvel Universe, and also to make the Marvel's comic universe more in line with the cinematic universe. There are little things, like certain characters look more like their movie counterparts. Some backgrounds and personalities have changed. It was a deliberate attempt to freshen things up, and a first for Marvel. Marvel did not typically reboot its universe like DC does. We actually did a show about that a number of years ago.
Yes.
And in the last few years, Marvel has, in the new kind of Marvel that has generated out of Secret Wars, experimented with flexing their muscles on things. For example, we have a new Thor. The Thor who's currently Thor is a woman, and it's actually. Do we have to still say spoiler?
I don't think so.
No, it is
Jane Foster.
Jane Foster. I almost said Lady
Natalie
Jane.
Portman from the movie.
Right. We have instead of Captain America, Steve Rogers was aging throughout a good portion of this storyline. A new Captain America is
Sam Wilson.
Wilson.
Yeah.
And then Wolverine, pretty dramatically, a number of years ago now.
Yeah, I'm
died.
surprised at how long Wolverine stayed dead.
Yeah.
Although after Secret War, Old Man Logan showed up from the Old Man Logan verse.
Right.
And basically was fulfilling the role of old Wolverine.
Exactly.
But now X-23 is the Wolverine.
Right. There was a lot of interesting and surprisingly long-legged versions of these characters, and they lasted longer than everybody had given them credit for.
Yeah, a lot more diverse.
Sure.
And a lot newer and different takes on a lot of Marvel's classic characters. Amadeus Cho is Hulk.
Right.
We have Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur instead of the old Moon Boy. And I think probably the most successful of all of them has been Kamala Khan as Ms. Marvel.
Right. And with that
Fabulous,
comes
by the way.
new numbering and new everything.
Yeah.
They attempt to bring all these fans, allegedly, to bring those fans that were longtime fans that had fallen out of comics and people who were just found out about comics from the successful movies into the Marvel Universe. It didn't do too well long term.
Yeah.
Sales have been suffering throughout comic industry. I can't say that it's because of these initiatives, but
They're probably not helping.
they may not be helping. And this event, Marvel Legacy, is an attempt to bring back and honor the Marvel legacy. Things like this tend to get really hyper emotional. People tend to put a lot of baggage on change in comics because this illusion of change thing is a big deal. A lot of people cannot handle it when something that they're used to changes, and a lot of people get very upset when something that has changed changes back. I don't get any of that. I don't understand the passion and the anger.
I don't know about getting it, but I mean, we saw a lot of it when DC decided to revamp itself years ago.
Yeah.
And the outcry of positive and negative to it. And then now they're kind of back with this whole rebirth thing in a way where they flipped everything again.
I'm not even going to go
ago.
into DC
Yeah, we
right
have to
now.
So
focus
it's like,
one at a time.
I think DC, at least from what I'm seeing, is still having its own little identity crisis. I think Marvel
Not literally, but
kind of
Again.
from this is kind of learning from some of the mistakes that they made and maybe some of the other companies have made.
I'll say I can speak to the fan that's upset about the way they handle things a lot, because when they get rid of a character and replace it and then decide, oh no, never mind, we're going to bring the old character back. If they ignore everything that's gone on, even with the character that we didn't like,
the new character.
yeah, the new character, if they just erase that and pretend it never happened, I feel cheated.
Yeah.
Because you've invested the time and the money and everything into
and
this.
I have followed this story, and now you turn around and tell me that story didn't matter at all. It didn't happen, really.
Right, absolutely.
And I don't like that. Even if you... I personally, and I know a lot of people hold this up as the gold standard of awful, but I didn't even mind Spider-Man Brand New Day.
Okay.
Where Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson make a literal deal with the devil to say that your entire marriage just magically vanishes away.
Right.
I don't even mind that because it's an actual in-story thing. There's an in-story explanation for why everyone is ignoring what I read. And you could actually go back and, undo that at some point if you felt like it. But there's a story. There's a story reason, and I'm okay with that. I may not like it, but I'm okay with it.
Well, are there non-story reasons in these books? I mean, I always think that there is something. The universes collide together, and now no one remembers things.
A lot of times there are. A lot of times there aren't. At the moment, I'm struggling to think of one. We may be on the cusp of one happening in Legacy.
Oh, really?
Which I'll get into later.
Yeah. For me, it's a mixed bag. I get liking your characters that you've loved for years and not wanting to see them change, and then also not feeling cheated out when you do have a character that you love that was a changed, updated character that gets reverted back. But ultimately, like, there is sort of a contract with the reader and the writers and the creators of this, is that this is, you know, we're dealing with the illusion of change. And I think the end of the day, it all comes down to how well it was executed. I think we tend to, especially fans, we tend to point fingers at each other at different camps and say, you know, you're wrong. You're unequivocally wrong. You're just doing this for publicity, or you're doing this because of whatever. But I think ultimately, like, a lot of this comes down to how well it's executed. I think the best example for me would be Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel was a character before Kamala Khan came along, but the way they treated Kamala Khan's ascension to the role of Ms. Marvel was awesome. It was totally in universe, and we did a podcast on this. And what was great about it was it didn't seem arbitrary. It even seemed like it celebrated fandom.
Yeah,
because
she was a fan of the original Ms. Marvel.
That's why she picked up the mantle. And after Ms. Marvel moved on to a more interesting for the character's career.
I think that was handled very well, because there was a good stretch of time between when Carol Danvers changed her name from Ms. Marvel to Captain Marvel.
Right.
And actually, a big stretch of time between when the Captain Marvel title was no longer used.
Exactly.
Before she decided to pick it up. And then a nice long chunk of time between when she dropped Ms. Marvel and when Kamala picked up Ms. Marvel.
Yeah, I think that really helps when you get a situation with, and I'm embarrassed to say this, I haven't actually read it, but when X-23 takes over for Wolverine, it feels like it's just a passing of a baton immediately. Yeah, that doesn't really.
We gotta have a Wolverine.
Yeah,
you might as well.
It really feels like, why are we putting so much value on these trademarks in universe? Granted, she is, of course, his daughter, and there's a bunch of things in there, and then I could see why she might want to take over and the same thing with Falcon taking up Captain America and putting it down again and picking it up and putting it down. Like, you could do it well, or you could kind of just half-ass it, and this is what I think.
Falcon at least getting the title of Captain America, I accept it.
I mean, I would say that
because that was it was like a formal change. It's like, Steve Rogers was, I can't be Captain America anymore.
Right.
I am passing it on to you.
And we talked about this in the last podcast, but I have more problem with why he stopped. He was like, I'm done with Captain America. You're young again. I mean, take this.
Captain America,
well, he was old.
I think still goes down as one of my all-time favorite comic book characters. I mean, I've always loved reading him. And I think the last two times that they decided to replace him, I think it was done fairly well.
Right.
Basically the same way both times.
Right.
I feel like there's a way of doing these things well, and there's a way of honoring the fact that you are going to reset the button every once in a while, and then there are ones that are more frustrating, and it also seems to go up and down in cycles, where somebody will be very upset about the all-new version, for example, New 52, which was not well received. Well, arguably,
it was
mixed received, but Rebirth seems to be doing a relatively good job. People seem to be liking it. And then there's the Marvel Now versus the Marvel Legacy. And we'll wait and see.
I'm going to break my own rule, and I'm going to say one thing about Rebirth.
Okay.
It's like, the reason I think you're getting positive responses to Rebirth is because Rebirth is basically about the DC Comics characters realizing that there is something completely screwed up about the continuity of their timeline and universe, and trying like hell to figure out what exactly is going on. It's like they just noticed that everything got screwed up and they're trying to fix it. That being said, we're talking about Legacy.
Right. So let's actually dig in and talk a little bit about Legacy.
Yeah.
Ken, let's start with your initial impressions. You're going in on this with a relatively blank slate. What do you think?
I guess because not reading anything leading up to it, just the opening story, it took me a second to realize that these were original gods that we're focusing on in the beginning of this tale.
It could be, yeah.
To a degree. It's interesting and vague enough that I'm curious to see how all this can go. And then as it unfolds, we see how this prologue story is meeting up with some of the other characters in the Marvel Universe. Again, being out of it for a little bit. I mean, me trying to understand where all these characters are currently at. It was okay, and I can kind of see how this is a start of a new reboot for Marvel. The triumvirate of Sam Wilson, Captain America, and Thor, and what are they calling it?
Ironheart is what Riri Williams is going by.
Ironheart.
Yeah.
Seeing them together was fun. Seeing the back and forth of Thor and Captain America possibly making out after the battle was done, I thought was interesting.
Yeah, they're kind of an item now.
Okay.
Think of that sentence. Thor and Captain America are kind of an item now. Yeah.
And then the moment where they kind of realize that this is probably going to be one of the last times that they're battling together. You know, they're coming to grips that things are, I guess, changing.
Wow.
Sam realizes that, Steve Rogers is back.
Right.
And that it seemed like this was kind of like this last thing is going to be one of his swan songs as Captain America.
It's been going on for in that status quo for a little while now. It didn't occur to me that we've got the big three at the core of the Avengers: Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor, and their new equivalents there have been running around running the Avengers for a little while, and it didn't occur to me that none of them are a white male.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Which is impressive. And I give them kudos for doing that diversity thing and never pointing it out. Never doing jumping jacks and saying, hey, look at how diverse we are. It literally took me this long to say, oh, wow.
Yeah, the comments on this podcast might be disagreeing with you, but we'll see. We don't generally attract that many trolls. I agree that it does feel like a really comfortable stepping on point where I don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
I didn't know what was happening, but I don't feel like I needed to know what was happening.
No, I got an idea that this was going on, but obviously this is becoming the end of something, just by how the dialogue was going. The one thing that did kind of throw me off is Roberto Reyes as Ghost Rider. Not realizing that he actually is the Ghost Rider now.
That's actually pretty interesting.
That was the thing I was talking about, the possible big, just random retcon that nobody mentioned, because he's not.
Yeah, because I remember, I think I read the first issue, and I remember reading articles, and I could have sworn that his incarnation of Ghost Rider was a different demon.
Yeah, and actually it was a ghost. It was the spirit or whatever of a mass murdering drug dealer who inhabited him and made a deal trying to use him as a tool to influence the physical world and get his vengeance.
That's interesting.
For the people that double-crossed him.
But that was before the whole universe colliding thing that may have rewritten part of Marvel Universe.
That's what I'm trying to remember.
It was.
Was it?
Yeah, it definitely was. And since then,
certainly it's before the Cosmic Cube events.
Yeah, and it was going on. And it came out, and it was before Robbie Reyes made his film Marvel Cinematic Universe debut in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV show, where he seems pretty clearly to be Ghost Rider, the actual
Spirit
Ghost
of Vengeance.
Right. They don't answer whether or not there are other Ghost Riders, although I think they may have mentioned that there have been other Ghost Riders in the past, but not like if there's a Nick Cage Ghost Rider somewhere out there riding a motorcycle and mugging for the camera. We don't know, but it does seem like he is the Ghost Rider. In this book, it also feels like, he is a Ghost Rider, and in fact, he does gain the ability of the Penance Stare.
Yeah, and he is shocked by it.
Right.
It's not something that he knows he can do. And that's the only thing that gives me a glimmer of hope, because it's possible that something has happened that has changed, and now he has actually assumed the mantle of the Spirit of Vengeance for whatever reason.
Right.
So I'm hoping we get an explanation to it, but otherwise it's the exact kind of change that I hate. Right.
So from my perspective, as someone who is a little caught up on what was going on in the recent history of Marvel, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. And I don't know about how much of that makes me an old fogey. And I like the resetting of the status quo. part of it is that I feel more like I can handle this because it's not a really complicated situation where I'm running into. I think in the last. What was it? It was this. I think it was with Secret Empire.
Yes.
In the last few issues of Secret Empire, there were multiple characters walking around. I think named Ant-Man. I'm almost positive of that. There was a couple of characters who were constantly being referred to by the superhero, and there were different iterations of them.
Well, there was a Giant Man, there was an Ant-Man, and then there was Black Ant.
And there's always a little bit of that in Marvel, but like it got to the point where like I can't follow this. It's too complicated. I'm not going to pick up 20 different lines and try to catch up.
Yeah.
So this felt a little bit like I was going to be given, and it's something we haven't really discussed. I wanted to bring it up, but maybe I could bring it up now, is one of the things that I'm upset about when we relaunch these characters as all new versions is I feel like it does hurt diversity in that we don't get new characters. We just get new versions of those same old characters. Instead of getting a new African-American or superhero, we get Spider-Man, but he's black. And I'm like, that's okay. But like, there are characters out there that I'd like to see, characters from the 90s when this was a big deal. You know, like, I would like to see them being used more. And in this case, you know, I felt like we had just had so many different characters who were all the kind of same hero, the same trademark.
Yeah.
This felt easier for me to grasp onto. And I like the framing device of the long time ago, our legacy was that there are these great beings and they fought on Earth and Earth is really important and they destroyed a god and they buried the god. I like that as a framing device, not only because it's a nod to the legacy of Marvel Universe, but also because it's super comic booky. I like the ancient Kirby god buried underneath the planet who's rising up and doing horrible things. Like, that's cool for me. I enjoy it. I want to have fun reading my comics. I don't want it to all be, you know, socio-political turmoil.
Yeah, bizarrely enough, I love the whole Avengers of 1 million BC concept.
I enjoy that a lot. I very, very much. And ultimately, the end of it, which is the big kind of like thing, the unspoken fear for the legacy fans of Marvel, and arguably, you know, all the changes that are happening within the House of Ideas, is what's going on with the Fantastic Four. And that frame of this is important, this is our legacy with Val, that I love. I love that they touched on it. I love it because no one spoiled it. No one hinted at it. It made me feel like, this is me with decades of history in these books.
Yeah. So, I mean, so we're spoiling the end here now?
Yeah,
because
I think,
again, that's what spurned a little question with me.
Because you don't know what's going on with the Fantastic Four?
Well, the book hasn't been around for a while.
Yeah,
I think it's more of a question of wasn't Secret Wars supposed to have abolished all these universes?
Yeah, you didn't. Nobody really understood what happened at the end of Secret Wars. And that was part of the problem. Secret Wars, basically what happened there was Doctor Doom became God and collapsed all of reality into one universe. By the end of Secret Wars, Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four essentially undid that. And they basically started splintering off, or started a chain reaction of a multiverse splintering off from the main universe.
Okay, so that explains why then there is one at the end.
So the multiverse is back now, has been for several years. It was only gone for about 9 issues of Secret Wars.
And it's really just an excuse to make it so that there are 2 main Marvel universes at the time that this started. It was the main Marvel universe, and then there was the Ultimate Universe. So they wanted to bring those Ultimate. No, those are the ones that would get their own lines for the most part. It's the most books came out of the regular Marvel universe, and then there was a whole line of Ultimate books that came out in this other one. They were doing away with Ultimate. They wanted some of those characters to stay.
So it was an excuse to fold that in,
and that's the only reason why this happened.
What has been going on with the Fantastic Four is at the end of Secret War, they established that the Fantastic Four, that Reed, Sue, and the Richards family were going to go out and start charting this new multiverse and discovering things, helping these fledgling universes along with Franklin's power.
Okay.
And they also had the Molecule Man. Basically, they were recreating the multiverse because they're taking these little fragmentary bubbles that are popping off of the universe and expanding them into full-fledged universes. Unfortunately, they kind of left Johnny Storm and the Thing in the lurch. It's like, hey, this isn't something that you're going to be doing.
Gotcha. One of the things, Frank, you brought up the idea of your favorite part of the cosmic stuff in Marvel. With finally the Celestials coming up out of the ground. I like that we got a quick page of a couple panels that brought us back to the cosmic status quo that everyone's looking for Infinity Gems again.
Yes.
Yeah. This is something that's been popping up recently in Guardians of the Galaxy, and they just kind of solidified it in Legacy.
So we learned what we thought about it. What about somebody who has been reading consistently? What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I was actually really interested because from my perspective reading it, I didn't think anybody would understand at all what was going on. And I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to tell what parts are supposed to be confusing and new, like the Avengers of 1 million BC. It's like, because we've had no hint about those.
They've never been shown.
They've never been shown. This is the first appearance, and I'm sitting there saying, okay, let's discover this. What's going on here? Versus stuff like Doctor Strange talking about how magic died. Magic was wiped out in the universe.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, was that something that was established?
Yeah, he mentions it in passing.
But it was something that was
the
in
fact
the
that
books.
and talks about the fact that he's trying to rebuild it.
So an example of that for you is that I would never have thought Wolverine's appearance in the book was anything controversial, but for news articles. News articles telling me that Wolverine has been dead, and me being kind of like aware of the geek universe, knowing he had died in the comics, him appearing, I'm like, oh, this is significant for more than just that he has an Infinity Gem.
But that's the thing. As somebody who's been reading, it's like I've been used to seeing Old Man Logan running around.
So for you, it's like seeing a young Logan.
He's not drawn that differently. Like, that's the thing. The way he appears in this isn't all that different from the different variations of different artists drawing Old Man Logan.
Right.
So I had to reread that a few times, and it wasn't until he says something about, I'm back or something.
Yeah.
That I even thought, I guess that's real Wolverine?
So when Natasha, who it turns out is not dead, Ken, did you know that Natasha died?
No, I did not.
She died a few issues ago. In
Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow.
Yeah, in Secret Empire. So this has literally been maybe an issue since she has been dead. When Natasha finds the cocoon or shell of what Wolverine was, it says, you made it. You're alive.
Oh, no. That was Jean Grey.
Oh, was that Jean Grey? Can I see that picture?
Yeah, that was young Jean Grey from the 60s.
Oh, is this this is young Jean Grey finding Wolverine? Okay.
Yes.
When you said that was Jean Grey, I thought that was Jean Grey's cocoon. I'm like, pretty sure that's not Jean Grey.
No. The redhead is
that's fair enough. That I don't know why I assumed it was.
If you've got Wolverine and a redhead in a panel, odds are it's going to be Jean Grey.
She does have a noticeable X in her uniform too, but whatever. So why was he in a cocoon?
That's how he died.
Cement?
He was encased in molten adamantium.
Oh,
I just took it that it was a shrine or something to him.
Nope. That was him.
All right. We should have only talked about this panel.
I thought it was like a burial plot.
We should have only ever talked about this panel. This is great. So, we got to do this reverse. Let's start off with what we are looking at right here. Is several panels where Jean Grey is looking at like this pedestal with this husk of a split open thing that looks vaguely like Wolverine. There's claws in there. He looks, like he was tragically on his knees.
Yeah.
And it's all ripped open. Evidence that he is back out of this thing that I thought maybe was a cocoon or whatever. But Pete, what actually happened?
What actually happened is Wolverine was in the middle of a big fight, ended up, fighting tooth and nail, getting covered in molten adamantium, and finishing off the bad guys while he's encased in the adamantium, and ending in that tragic, heroic pose. And then there was a big fight over that Wolverine body / statue. And eventually it got enshrined there, apparently. I missed a lot of that.
Okay, great. So this is what I saw. I'm dimly aware of what was going on. I knew Wolverine was dead. I knew him coming back was going to be a big deal in this issue. When I saw this, first of all, I did think that Jean Grey was Natasha because she was just killed off in a book. And I was like, oh, clearly they're going to deal with that.
No, we think that she's alive for a different reason.
Okay, great. And then it looked like he had been cocooned in something and split himself out, and that like I thought maybe it was something to do with Inhumans. Like, did he get hit by one of those
Wolverine and Inhuman?
And he got in one of those rock cocoons, and now he's cracked out. Like, I had no idea any of this happened. I didn't have a real context of what was going on, but at least I think I got most of it. Let's go over to Ken. What the hell did you think?
I followed the literal narration where it says she tells herself she's come here to the remote wilds of Canada in order to visit the grave of a fellow X-Man. So I just figured that was like a tomb, like an actual grave site. And the fact that where it was split is actually he clawed his way out and tore it open and came out of it.
I love that you think that at some point he went to his tomb and he was like, screw the statue, and he just clawed it up a bunch.
No, I thought he was buried.
He was buried.
I thought he was buried in there and clawed himself out and came up through the statue.
There was an old statue.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow.
My problem is I never understood why anybody assumed he was dead.
I did think that was a lot funnier when I thought he just showed up to where there was a statue of himself. It was like, screw the statue.
That would be great.
It doesn't look anything like me.
There's like no features at all.
Yeah.
Where's the hair? I had hair.
I had pointy hair. That was my whole thing. That was like 90% of my thing.
Yeah, that was most of it.
Oh, man. All right, so...
That and being short.
So, yeah, did we get most of it right, Pete, though? You said you were worried that somebody who didn't know anything would be lost. Did we get most of it?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you got any plot points wrong. I'm impressed that you embraced it as much as you did, because I thought it was going to be confusing. I thought you were going to pick up on this. You were going to come into this and not understand, okay, who are these people and why are they not Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, but they are? I
think what you need... I'm ready to give my review, if you guys are too. I think what you need for this book to enjoy it is you have to go in with an open mind. You have to be able to... You have to know that at one point or other, there's a bunch of Marvel universes that existed and multiple people taking on different roles of these characters. Some of them are missing in action. Some of them are retired. Some of them are coming back.
And here, let me ask you: you don't care that you didn't get an explanation for these things directly?
I think the exposition was enough for me to kind of understand what's happening and understand that we're going to be moving beyond what we're seeing right now.
Okay, so you did think that the exposition was enough, satisfactory.
Right.
Yeah. Like for example, Wolverine is clearly dead and back. I don't really know how, and I don't know if I care how. I'm curious about who this new Wolverine is and why he's different.
Yeah.
And like I think Pete said, I'm curious as to why they thought he was dead, because it seems like that's the thing Wolverine would definitely survive from. With Iron Man is not there. He's still not there. What happened to him? Is he sick? What's going on?
He was in a coma.
He was in a coma,
right.
but he
now he's
walked
gone.
away. Right. So that whole thing is confusing, but it seems pretty light. You know, it's like Iron Man was in a coma and he's gone now.
And that explains why we have another Iron Man.
Yeah,
that made sense to me.
Yeah, that was enough. Thor, not much of an explanation, but I did know a decent amount of what was going on with Thor beforehand, so maybe not quite fair.
I did mention it to Peter yesterday, and the one thing that I did love about stopping reading at one point and then coming back to this, I remember when Jane Foster became Thor. Yeah. And I remember how upset Thor was that he wasn't Thor anymore, and it bothered him, and he was upset and it's, I can't think of the word.
Despondent.
Yeah. And then I picked this book up and I see Thor, like the original Thor, the Odin son, in a bar being upset that he's not Thor.
And like, how long has this been going on?
He's still complaining, and
I had to explain to Ken that no, we actually just haven't had any character growth.
So at least
in Thor in the intervening time.
Yeah, so where Thor's concerned, I'm like, I'm fine. I didn't miss a damn thing.
Yep, yep, sounds about right.
You missed a lot of stuff. It just ended in exactly the same place.
Right. So yeah, for me, my review is going to be that if you come in there with an open heart and you're like just saying, this is just, I'm gonna get into a new story that's gonna have some things I recall and some elements of the new stuff that has happened in the last few years, you will enjoy it.
That's a really nice sentiment, Frank.
Yeah.
But that's not how we do reviews here on Near Mint.
How do you mean?
Why, on Near Mint, we rate comics. You just read the damn thing.
Oh, you mean what's
your grade?
I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
So my feelings are, believe it or not, and I hate doing this on the first issue, I'm going to give this a Near Mint. Oh, thank you.
I'll jump in there. I'm probably going to go Near Mint on this, but it's just a hair shy of being good for me.
Another Near Mint. So how is it right on the edge? What can they miss?
To be honest, I didn't need the Wolverine reveal yet.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this came out pretty quick, but I feel like they want to make sure they do good by a lot of people, and there's a lot of people to cut, a lot of balls in the air for Marvel. I do not envy them this job. Pete, your review?
It's interesting because I mean this is the first time back for Near Mint in a while. Mm-hmm. And I don't really care about this as a jumping on point. I care about advancing the story and wrapping up a lot of the loose threads that have been around and making sense of stuff that's been going on. So I guess it's kind of fitting that we go unanimously Near Mint.
Wow, nice! Three-way Near Mint.
Unanimous Near Mint.
Unbelievable.
For the return of Near Mint.
All right, sounds good.
I did have one more thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's the panel that actually allowed me to give this a Near Mint. First off, Deadpool killed Phil Coulson.
Oh, yeah.
It's not quite... It's definitely not remind us to tell you about that sometime.
But the panel with the bullets and everything was like, now I remember why I like Deadpool.
Super, have another. Yeah, it was interesting. So I just hope that Marvel can keep up the consistency. I honestly, legitimately hope that they not only honor the legacy, but also do something fun with all the cool characters that they have built up in the last few years that they fought tooth and nail with a lot of fans to get out the door, some of which were really legitimately awesome. And I want to see how this universe evolves from here.
I believe it was brought up earlier before we started reviewing the book too about where this was going and that there's new titles coming out and stuff is coming back. There are a couple of things coming out of this that I am excited for, like the Marvel 2-in-1 with Thing and Johnny Storm.
Yep.
I used to love the old 2-in-1s and the Marvel Comics Presents and the whole Spider-Man team up.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
I like the idea of bringing that back. And Venom, Deadly Protector, was that the name of the title?
I believe so.
Or Lethal Protector.
Lethal Protector
is coming back with art by Mark Bagley.
Yes.
That's got me stoked. So I mean, there's a couple of good things that we're going to be seeing over the next couple of months. Mm-hmm. That are,
I'm actually excited for Spirits of Vengeance, which first issue dropped today.
Yes, it did. So I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming out of this that is going to be reminiscent of why I loved reading Marvel back in the day.
Absolutely, and I think that's the hope, and I hope the hope carries us through to like issue 2 at least.
And hey, another ad for Comic Book Today. Guardians of the Galaxy, for all you 90s fans, features a showdown between Richard Rider Nova and Darkhawk.
No way.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Very cool.
I can get behind
also
that.
Big for fans of the cosmic operas from the mid 2000s.
Yes.
Which were what were they?
I forget what they were called. M and Les Mis.
Oh, you're right. Thank you, Frank.
No problem. Well, the Infinity series, like
not the Infinity series. What came the stuff that led to the new Guardians of the Galaxy? It's not Invasion, Annihilation.
Annihilation. That's right.
The Annihilation series.
Yes.
All right, so that was 3 Near Mints for Marvel Legacy, the return. That's really exciting. We're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, some quickie reviews. Near mint. Wow. What an exciting show. 3 near mints in a row. Marvel Legacy 1 seems pretty cool. It doesn't seem like we're going to get a Legacy number 2.
It doesn't appear that way. And if it is, I don't think it's going to be right away.
Right.
Most of these stories, I mean, a lot of the book was set up with different art teams from the books that are going forward, the ongoing books going forward.
And nods to say, if you want to hear more, read on the next issue of this.
Yeah.
So the Ghost Rider story can continue on in Ghost Rider, Doctor Strange, and Tales of the Doctor Strange.
Right. Even Steve Rogers being back and what's going on with him and that little blurb, we'll probably see all that coming. Yeah. So I think they tended to spotlight enough characters to let you know where their series are going to go.
But I think they did set up enough with the Avengers of 1 million BC, which doesn't seem to be directly referenced in anything else. Same with the Fantastic Four, because the Fantastic Four are not getting a new book, at least right now.
Right. Johnny Storm and the Thing might be in...
Yeah, they have Marvel 2 in 1.
Right.
But the Reed and Sue and Franklin and Val...
I don't think we'll see much from them for a while.
Yeah, well, at least for a little bit. I think they're setting up another, event. Which we'll probably have in a few months.
So which books would you, just really quickly, Marvel 2 and 1 seems like the one that I'm interested in, and maybe Ghost Rider. I think Ghost Rider seems like, I like Robbie Reyes now.
Spirits of Vengeance.
Spirits of Vengeance.
I don't think, is Ghost Rider getting a series again?
I don't know, but what about you? You said Marvel 2 and 1 for yourself.
Marvel 2 and 1, definitely. I'm looking forward to the new Venom, like I said earlier, with that creative team. And again, I'll always follow Cap, especially now that Steve Rogers is back.
I am super excited for Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh. I want to read about the Infinity Stones.
Oh, yeah. All right, good one.
And I am also really excited about the new Moon Knight, because I will always give Moon Knight another chance.
You can't have enough Moon Knight number ones.
No, it's Moon Knight 188.
Whatever.
I don't think he ever had a series that got past 30.
And, it's always going to be, so just adding those all up.
Adding them all up gets to 188.
Wow. And then, of course, there is always going to be...
the hope that Sleepwalker comes back? Yes.
No, I meant that no one interested in any mutant book. God, we really got burned on mutants, didn't we? What's going on?
A little bit.
Huh. All right, cool. So we're going to do a quick roundtable for reviews for things that are not necessarily Marvel. Let's go. Who wants to go first? Pete, you're the longest... Oh, never mind. You have food in your mouth. You son of a bitch.
No. Okay.
All right, go.
I'll do it. Okay. Lately, I have been reading something that's got my appetite whetted for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Marvel's been putting out Road to the Last Jedi, or Journey to the Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
Much like they did Journey to The Force Awakens with the prequel stuff.
Right, all starring Bing Crosby.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's Road to The Last Jedi.
All right,
it's all musicals, and Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Wonderful. No.
So what Marvel book are you reviewing?
It's a Star Wars Marvel book.
All right, good enough.
It's outside of the Marvel Universe. It's different. It's baby steps for me, okay?
Wait until the Fantastic Four get there.
Oh.
That would be amazing. Oh, yes, my God. All right.
But this is focusing on one of the big unanswered questions from The Force Awakens. How did Captain Phasma get off of Starkiller Base?
Oh, interesting.
So this is the Journey to The Force Awakens, Captain Phasma. It's actually very good. It's kind of a flimsy premise.
All right.
All my false bravado ahead. It's like, okay, we'll just assume she gets off. But it answers that question pretty quickly.
Cool.
And then begins to tackle a whole other story that you didn't even see coming.
Oh, that's neat.
And so I think they did a great job of taking a loose thread from the movie and spinning a new story out of it that I'm sure it won't have any real impact on...
That's fine. It doesn't all have to be...
It's great. Because it doesn't matter if you didn't read it.
Is it a one-shot or...?
No, it's a mini-series. I think it's either 4 or 6 issues. I don't remember.
I'd be interested because, no offense. I don't think we got a lot of that character in the last movie anyway.
It was all look and no...
This does flesh her out a lot.
Cool.
I respect her a lot more as a character after reading just the first 2 issues.
I like to hear that.
All right. Mine is going to be a DC book. Now, many of you know by now that DC has somehow been given permission to do Hanna-Barbera books,
that's right.
which are insane.
Warner Brothers, man, it's all the same company.
Insane.
Like
These books.
Scooby-Doo Apocalypse and stuff like that.
There's like a very weird Flintstones book, which is apparently amazing. But the book that I am really getting into now is it's only in their second issue as of now.
I knew it. I knew you would love this.
Dastardly and Muttley.
Oh,
How do I describe this? It's like a caper book in a way, and like a spy thriller.
I was hoping to be like a buddy road movie.
There's a little bit of that. There, so Dastardly and Muttley, if you don't remember, Warner Brother, Hanna-Barbera cartoon characters, Snidely Whiplash, kind of style with a twisty mustache, Dick Dastardly. That kind of a trope villain.
Yeah.
And his snickering dog, that Muttley. Possibly most famous for Catch the Pigeon. I don't know if
the Wacky Races.
They were one of the people in Wacky Races as well. In Catch the Pigeon, and no, that's actually that's the theme song. It's Dick Dastardly and his Flying Machines, I think was the name of the cartoon.
Yeah.
Anyways, they were pilots in a plane trying to catch an enemy pigeon who was like this courier pigeon, and I think World War I, because it's the last World War you can make jokes about, except for Hogan's Heroes, which gets a mulligan, I guess. Anyways, so there are jet pilots in this book.
Yeah.
There is a terrorist like nerve agent gas that destroys the laws of physics, makes people act like cartoons.
Wow.
Sort of in the book. So if you get hit with it, like you can, if you get shot and you're affected by this gas, you will have a giant hole in your chest. You won't die because you're like a cartoon, but you're in what's effectively a real world. So people are looking at you with a giant hole in your. It's insane. It is insane. It is just crazy. Garth Ennis is the writer. So
Of course. That's the most messed up thing
that
of all.
it is great. Pick it up. I highly recommend it. What was your review on Phasma?
Oh, I didn't give one, but I'm gonna, mint on that, minty fresh.
I'll say mint on Dastardly and Muttley. Ken.
I also have a DC Comics book, which is also a joint venture with Boom Studios.
All right, cool.
In the vein that they did a couple of years ago. It's a Green Lantern story.
Okay, good.
Another one
where it's Planet of the Apes Green Lantern.
All right, yeah, that's Ken.
I loved a couple of years
welcome
ago.
back, Ken.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, they did Star Trek Planet of the Apes, that was great, and then DC did Green Lantern Star Trek, which was great. So why not just bring them all together?
Yeah, that makes this all.
Get your yellow handcuffs off of me, you
There
damn dirty ape.
There is something almost similar to that at this point.
Oh, wow.
It's an interesting story. I'm not going to go too involved with it, but essentially, there was the original Ring Guardian, who was exiled off to another dimension because
his name was Dave, I think.
Yeah, because it was deemed too powerful and actually made him psychotic and ultimately killed him. But the original ring encompassed all of the power of the spectrum.
Oh, okay. Back to the spectrum. Got it.
And he was cast aside and died. Sinestro went looking for it, and you find out that the dimension that this body went to was to the Planet of the Apes.
Ah, I see. Interesting.
Hal Jordan goes after trying to find the ring and to defeat Sinestro, and ultimately the person who does find the ring is Cornelius. And it's glorious. It drives him insane, but all he wants to do is good.
All right.
And all he wants to do is prevent all the oppression.
Sequels and remakes.
Actually, he wants it to tear apart the original way that their planet works. They want to get rid of the hierarchy with Dr. Zaius.
Man, he's taken down the hierarchy.
Cornelius versus Zaius? No.
And it's actually a very, very interesting concept, a very fun read. And believe it or not, the last issue leaves you on a cliffhanger. So I'm assuming we're going to be getting a sequel.
One question. Please tell me that Zero, right?
Yeah.
Please tell me she doesn't end up in a refrigerator.
No.
Okay, good.
No.
That's a deep cut. No. But it could be deeper. All right. So what are you going to rate it?
I will go near mint on this one.
Oh, we almost had a full mint on the ancillaries. That's okay. So maybe the next time we do one of these shows, we will find the next best thing, which is 3 Pores. I do enjoy the pores. So thanks, Ken, for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Pete, for walking us through the legacy of Marvel Legacy.
I did a bad job.
And thank me for just being me.
You being awesome, Frank.
Thank you. All right, stay tuned for something. No, listen to the next episode.
Yeah, do that. You don't have to wait.
Yeah.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit Non-Productive.com.
still my brother. I said no matter what color, you are still my brother. Everybody wants to live together. Why can't we live together?
Hey, this is Frank.
James.
Pope.
Pete.
Al.
And for today's On Film podcast, we're going to try to answer a very interesting question. What makes a movie a horror film or a thriller? 'Tis the season where everyone is looking for a good scare, but the oldest fear is the fear of the unknown, and one thing we certainly don't know enough about is the clear lines of demarcation for the horror thriller genre. So let's get to it. Who wants to be the first person to suggest something wrong? James, go.
I guess
Terrible. I'm sorry, go on.
I guess I felt this totally when I went to see the new It movie, which I really enjoyed and thought was great, but I don't know. It just didn't feel like horror to me. It felt.
Are we going to go spoiler into this? Are we going to actually talk about these things in detail?
Do we want to?
Okay, if we say it, let's not. Let's try not to.
Right, we'll keep it light.
But we'll keep it light, yeah.
So, well, I felt the movie was enjoyable and it had some eerie and creepy moments. There was no point where I felt the things that I guess I'm used to feeling in a horror movie, which is like anxiety, and fear.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't have those things, I was more excited about the kid's adventure, which are things I associate with thrillers.
Right. Okay, but so my first issue with this is that a thriller should definitely form anxiety and make a tense scene. I don't know if I would if I didn't feel anxiety, I don't know if I could call that a thriller.
I guess I don't really get that anxious during most movies, except for, I get maybe it's a different kind of anxious. Like I'm scared, like I myself am uncomfortable as compared to like just being uncomfortable or scared for the character or wondering what's going to happen.
All right, so that's a good distinction. You aren't experiencing anxiety, but in a horror movie, you are experiencing anxiety. In a thriller, you're seeing you're anxious for a character.
Exactly. So in horror, I feel like this is literally making me anxious as compared to, just anxious for what's happening on screen.
All right. I guess that's sort of in the world. I could see that. I think we're getting there, but I still feel like we're kind of a little far. Does anybody else have an example they want to bring? Maybe we can narrow this down and make these rules. Al?
I would definitely kind of disagree with James about the anxiety issue. I definitely feel like that is the quintessential element of thriller is anxiety. I feel like it's consistently like I was thinking of like a thriller that it's not horrific in any way whatsoever, which is Clint Eastwood's Absolute Power, where
Absolute. So wait a minute, hold on. Clint Eastwood's Absolute Power, if I am correct, this is the one where he is a thief.
Yes.
And he witnesses Gene Hackman as the president. Was it Gene Hackman?
Yes, it was Gene Hackman.
Killing somebody while having sex with them in the White House. Right?
Yes.
So, all right.
No, not in the White House,
Go
but
on.
in her home, because like he didn't break into the White House, obviously. But anyway,
because that would have been ridiculous. Go on.
Semantics.
Yeah.
Like the entire thing about like movies, like political thrillers, as this what kind of was, is that you are filled with the sense of anxiety. You are filled with the sense of, oh my, what's going on? Like, you're filled with essentially, like I said, anxiousness. You want to know what's happening, what's going to happen. Like, are people going to wind up okay? Is he going to get caught?
All right, yeah,
like,
sure.
Same thing with, like, I would say, Winter Soldier, which was kind of a spy thriller.
Sure.
Arguably. Like, there are definitely elements to that are spy thriller-y that evoke a sense of anxiousness. And I feel like, thriller films and horror films are not are both films and types of films, not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Sure.
When I think of a horror film, I think of being horrified, like genuine. Like I am revulsed, not necessarily disgusted, but I am taken aback.
Yeah.
It's not even about anxiety some of the time, which is why a lot of gore fests are still horror films, because I'm still horrified. I'm just not necessarily scared in that traditional sense. Like I think of a classic horror film, I think of Jaws.
Okay.
Where, like, that is essentially a film that horrifies you, because it's not like a shark never ate anybody.
Right.
And it plays on a very base fear, and just, like, you see people devoured, and it's like, oh, you're taken aback by that. The fear is brought to you by, like, your revulsion, from, like,
Yeah, the terror of not wanting to be eaten by a shark.
Yes.
Okay, so I get where you're saying that's horror. I can see Jaws as a horror movie, although I think a lot of people would argue against that. I think traditionalists, I don't even know if you would call them traditionalists, a lot of horror movie enthusiasts might have issues with Jaws being a horror movie, like because I think there's an element of the supernatural that tends to go with the horror. But I'm going to hold that off for a minute and deal with your what was the Absolute Power? Was it?
Yeah.
I think that's not the thriller anyone would confuse with horror. Like that is a political thriller. I mean, sure, you can come up with... So, all right, here's an example. Your monster movies with Dracula, that's clearly a horror film, especially if there's no, like, intrigue at all. There's no thrills. You could say that that's a horror film. The same way with your political intrigue movies are clearly thrillers. Like, I think there are places where the line is blurred, and I think it's closer to be blurred on Jaws than it is on Absolute Power or Story.
I mean, I'll argue that was kind of the point of it. Basically, sort of say, like, well, this is clearly a thriller, but it's so far removed away from horror films, like, to show this is still a thriller. Like, again, the idea was that these two types of films are not necessarily mutually exclusive to each other. A horror film can be both a thriller and a horror film.
Yeah, I get it. But do you think Jaws is a thriller?
I think of it as more of a classic horror film.
All right, but then as an example of not being mutually exclusive, give something that is clearly 100% into the thriller bracket. That's what you did. If you want to come up with something that's sort of right in both, I'm going to make the argument for Psycho, maybe? Because that is a thriller. I feel like that's a thriller because it's a psychological... So I think it's about the emotion that you're getting out of this thing, right?
I don't know about Psycho, because what about all the hellhounds and the vampire bats and the ghost? Okay, I never saw the movie. I only played the PC video game.
Oh, good. Was there really those things?
Oh, yes.
Oh, my goodness. So here's a little context. This is where I think we're getting. Thriller movies have they tend towards anxiety, right? There are twists and plot twists, and a lot of times there's like you're worried about what's going to happen with the characters, but they've got agency in what's going on with them. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're just victims. Where horror movies, the primary emotion I think is fear, and you are afraid of what's going on in the film, afraid of the monster, afraid of the situation, and I think. You know what? I'm maybe not Psycho. Psycho's right on the edge for me, but definitely the crazed killer versions are. So, for example, Psycho, obviously, with Norman Bates, and then you've even got, like, Hannibal or Silence of the Lambs. You've got a serial killer and even a main character who is in law enforcement, who has agency, who can, solve the mystery. But the things going on are kind of horror related. I feel like those two films makes this question impossible to solve. That's the line where you're like, it's hard to decide one way or another.
Very true, yeah.
I think you're completely missing the mark in like the Hannibal-esque, Silence of the Lambs type thing, because horror takes a regular person and kind of puts it in those crazy situations. What scares us about Friday the 13th is that these are kids at a camp. Someone goes around and just starts killing them.
All right.
Moms can't, help their kids from nightmares and, from Freddy Krueger. I feel like it evokes something of this couldn't necessarily happen to you, but it could. This is me. This is me in the movie. Oh no, dude in a mask who I knew when I was younger was going to come and kill me with a knife.
The protagonists are characters you can kind of project yourself into easily.
Yeah, exactly. You can get scared by a horror movie too. Like that's, I feel like, the explicit thing, like horror scares you. But I don't feel like thriller scares you, necessarily. The thriller is really just about, like, this build-up. Like, a thriller really just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds, whereas horror could be that it's kind of a build towards a cathartic release against, like, a relatable, direct fear.
I think if we can describe the relationship between a thriller and a horror, it's that they're frequently overlapping genres.
Right.
But it's a lot easier to make a thriller that is not a horror than to make a horror movie that has very little thriller in it.
Yeah, I agree.
So I guess my question is then what are like something we define then as like the most quintessential like horror movies for us?
Like a horror movie that is not
that is not a thriller.
That's what we have to figure out.
What do we think those movies have that separate them so much from thrillers?
So can we make a bit of a rules about this? Like, because I feel like we would have to
that's
find...
what we're going to do.
That's what we're trying to do.
All right.
I think, and stop me if you think I'm wrong on this one. House of a Thousand Corpses, which is one of my favorite horror movies.
Okay.
Rob Zombie film. I don't think that any sensible human being goes into watching that movie thinking without knowing 100% that the characters that we're seeing are about to die brutal, horrible deaths.
Right.
You might be somewhat curious to see if anybody survives, but you're assuming everyone's going to die. You're not kept on the edge of your seat wondering whether or not these people are going to make it out.
Yeah, I think that's a good example.
You're just horrified at what does happen.
Right.
I think late series horror films, like Jason X, or like Freddy versus Jason, like things that are like very late in the series where like there's nothing really unexpected at that point. There's nothing there's nothing that can really build your tension like that. But they're able to kind of pull the rug out from under you at a certain point where you're like,
There's
no, that guy got
surprises.
stabbed through the chest. Yeah,
Surprises, but not.
Surprise is probably our key element then.
Right.
Like I feel like,
And actually, I think they use that to their advantage in that it's you are not expecting the surprise. You're not on the edge of the seat when it hits you.
Right. So I think these are good. I also feel like these are cheats. I think like there are situations where a movie is clearly a horror film. I think, again, when you're talking about a monster or if you're talking about a horrific situation, but there isn't really a plot twist or anything, where there are no thrills, only surprises at best, I think those are clearly horror films. I think political intrigue films, on the other hand, offer no horror element on it whatsoever. I think situations like Silence of the Lambs, Psycho, some horror films with supernatural elements in there are in fact riding the edge, and I think there's got to be something different. And I think that might be with storytelling tropes. I think thrillers tend to have elements of plot twists in them, in the writing, in the story development, characters that reveal or conceal information from you. That where you as an audience member are misled, not just I didn't see the killer behind the pillar, I have been misdirected and what's supposed to be going on here.
I was told that the thriller was not that the killer was not behind the pillar.
That there were no pillars and there were no killers, something like that.
Yeah.
And that's all aspect to the thriller answer. That's all parts of the thriller. Horror has to be something that we fundamentally fear. Yes, it can be monsters. That's the easy answer. But it could also be creatures like sharks. It could be isolation. It could be madness. It could be something that is based entirely on a human fear. We all kind of mentioned it at one point or other. The characters in horror stories tend to be, or could be, normal people dealing with extraordinary situations and are reacting to them in fear, where the characters in thrillers tend to be more proactive, in my opinion, and maybe more exceptional in a way, because they're like thieves and robbers and stuff like that, or involved in robbery, or involved in bank heist or whatever was going on in Psycho, or FBI agents, but are trying to unravel an exceptional situation. I think that might be it.
Yeah, I think storytelling structure has a lot to do with it, too. I'm thinking, as I'm starting to play through films in my mind, I think of thrillers, to me, they kind of start with the Law and Order effect almost, right? They start with the body, with the proposal of the mystery, as compared to maybe horror movies that start with the first kill. You know what I mean? You see, you get they immediately introduce you to, this is what's to fear as is compared to this is what's to figure out, right? So Jaws opens with the shark attack, Scream opens with the first murder, Saw opens with the first puzzle, right? As compared to a lot of thrillers open up with, more of, all right, so like in Silence of the Lambs, we don't open with Buffalo Bill, the killer. We open with we open up with the idea that there's a killer. We don't know who he is yet. We haven't seen him kill.
Mm-hmm. Think on it more, though, tried to take this as a little kid, what really scared me in a movie. And what did you take away from the movie? Like, scary movie need not only scare you while you're watching it, but think about the effects that certain movies have had that were scary movies that affected, shower culture, like when you were talking about Psycho. Going to the beach, when you were talking about Jaws, how, like, there were movies like that like, entered into your psyche that were literally, like, a psychological effect. Like, maybe that's what it is. Maybe thriller is a physiological because it gets your heart racing, and scary movie horror is psychological in that it deeply affects you from watching it.
Oh, that's really hard and possibly true. All right, do we have enough where we could, like, list some things, some rules? Because I have some movies, and we can apply those rules to them and see if we're full of crap. Let's first try to come up with these rules. I'm going to say that thrillers have plot twists and complicated plots where information is concealed and that something has to be revealed in a significant way. Not just where is Dracula's body, but what is going on behind this whole mystery. That's one of mine. Whereas horror movies have... it's more about making you afraid of something that we can tie in directly to a real thing you might be afraid of, including a real supernatural thing, like an element that is a base fear that most people have, as opposed to a puzzle. That's a couple of mine. Anybody else?
Right.
I think John made a good point. I think horror movies tend to deal more with regular people as compared to professionals. We look at a professional in a movie and we think, well, they should be qualified. They should be qualified to handle this, so we're not as scared.
All right. Okay. Anyone else got a rule?
I think there are definitely going to be. I'll add in a slight exception to what James is saying. Like there can be a professional in a horror film, but they have to die.
Yeah.
Like that happens. That happens in horror films where it's sort of a moment
not capable of...
where you feel like they're going to make it, but then all of a sudden, like, Samuel L. Jackson gets killed by a shark, or,
Oh, interesting. Also, spoiler.
Oh my God, I never saw Unbreakable.
I will also say that often those are not even the protagonists.
No, they're not.
Right,
Film.
yeah. The protagonists of the film tend to be more normal people.
Okay, anybody else got another rule?
Horror movies get in your head, I'd say.
Horror movies get in your head.
Stay with
Thrillers get your blood pumping in the theater, but like, that might be it. Okay.
I think I'm going to add, like what I was saying before, was like I think we have to add in the revulsion factor. I think something has to happen in a horror film where you are, at some point, are meant to taken aback, even if you yourself aren't because of, jadedness or whatever. But something has to happen where you're like, not necessarily even a jump scare, but something just...
something to revolt you, to make you feel...
Something horrifies you, yeah.
Horrify you. But with thriller doesn't necessarily have to include that.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like we have a good set of rules. Let's see if it's worth anything. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to mention a movie. We vote on whether it's a thriller or horror just by gut instinct. On the table, we'll show hands, and then we'll announce it, and then we're going to see if we can apply the rules. Number 1, Saw. Do you think it's a thriller? Put your hands up if you think it's a thriller. If you think it's a horror movie, put your hands up.
Well,
thriller?
Yeah.
Okay, and horror movie.
Yeah, horror movie.
Okay, so we overwhelmingly said horror movie. It was 4-1. Let's dice this up. Are the protagonists Joes?
Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
Yeah, they're just
people.
pick people to torture to prove that life is worth living. I guess I don't know.
It kind of introduces the characters out of nowhere, just two random guys chained up.
Yeah,
right.
So we don't even know.
All right,
until later on.
Ding. All right, good. First rule works. Is the horror relatively straightforward? Something you could viscerally like, oh, it's something I don't want to have happen to me, or is it a thrill where it's like a puzzle you have to unravel?
I definitely think that it was something I don't want to have happen to me. I Saw is one of the few movies I can think of in recent memory where, when I saw it, where I was terrified of just the prospects of that.
But I will argue that the entirety of the situation is in and of itself a puzzle. Like, that's kind of what it is. Like, granted, it's like a puzzle where apparently you could theoretically saw your own foot off, but it's still like it's about figuring it out. It's not necessary, and that's what the movie's about. Even if there is that aspect of
tricky one on this.
I actually don't agree here. I would argue if you're looking for an element of the thriller in this movie, the element of the thriller in this movie is the little bit we get outside of the room, right, where we're learning who the two characters inside the room are.
I was going to bring that up.
That's the thriller element, not so much the puzzle. The puzzle, because it's applied as jigsaw shtick. I feel like that becomes the monster, right? It's almost like saying that it'd be kind of like making the argument that Jaws is the puzzle. I'm like, yeah, they're trying to figure out how to stop Jaws, but he's the monster.
Point. Right, okay.
And I also want you to realize that you're saying it's a puzzle wherein the solution to the puzzle is self-mutilation.
But it's not necessarily, actually.
No,
there was
a way out, yeah.
Yeah, there is a way. So I feel like this one's very tricky, and it's one of the reasons I picked it. There is a puzzle in it, but I don't know if this puzzle is really I think the puzzle is the monster, right? It's the shark. It's something that you don't want to have, because the puzzle couldn't eat you. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not like uncovering where Buffalo Bill is and dealing with Hannibal Lecter doesn't necessarily isn't in itself a puzzle. You know what I mean? It's.
Gotcha.
I think this might be a bell, a very weak bell, but a bell. Good. We don't think we can do that week in the future. All right. So one more. Does it stick with you? Did you leave the movie going, "Oh man, I don't want to be sawed," or did you go like, "Wow, that was a thrill ride," and my heart's beating? Anybody?
I feel like every time I watch a Saw movie, especially the first one, there's always just that gut wrenching. Oh my god, how could this happen to me? Oh wait, I can almost get out. The guy's in there. He's gonna kill me anyway. It's all crazy, scary, like this could really happen. This is
but
like
does it
this
stick
could
with
happen
you
to
after,
us.
Or is it just in the theater?
Yeah, especially because everything's practical in the movie. Everything was there, everything was real, and somebody could really chain me up and give me a saw to let me out.
Al?
I think this is just a me thing. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and concede that you guys probably win the point anyway, but when I left the movie, I was not walking out of it feeling like, oh man, some guy's going to put me in a death trap, I'm going to saw my foot off.
Interestingly enough, Al was the only one who didn't vote for this as being a horror movie, but that's another ding. I think we got Saw as a horror film. Our rules apply. They worked. All right, let's try a different one. Psycho. Is it a thriller or is it a horror movie? For those of you who think it's a horror movie, hands up. Those of you who think it's a thriller, hands up. We have unanimous thriller on this one. I thought that we'd be a little bit closer, but all right, thriller. Are there plot twists? Is it basically based on plot twists and withheld information? I think 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I still don't want to spoil Psycho for people.
I know. If you haven't seen Psycho, what are you doing here?
All right, that's a bell. Yeah, we got that. All right. What's next? Is the character a normal person?
Nope.
No.
Who's the main character?
I would say.
Who's the main character?
God, who is
This
the
is
main
a tough
character?
question.
Arguably Norman Bates? Arguably?
We certainly follow Norman the most, but again, you don't entirely, because that's the point of that's important. If you did the whole time, the misdirection wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Marion is not the main character, clearly. And I don't think it's Norman. It might actually be Norman. Who would...
I mean, is it her brother? Like isn't it her brother and his girlfriend?
Well, Leela. It would be her sister.
Oh, sister and her
would
boyfriend.
Show
sorry.
up, and I guess it's Leela. That's interesting. So I was all set to say no, she's not a normal person because she's a bank robber or a thief.
Yeah, and even the second person that comes in...
I can't remember what the MacGuffin was that she stole. It was money.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because this kind of bucks one of the exceptions we talked about, where...
This is the puzzle thing from Saw. This is the one where it's like a weak one, but I am prepared to say yes. I would think that most people went into this... Like, if my memory of Psycho is that a thief shows up at a motel, or whatever, and then gets killed, and then there's a mystery of who did it and why and what happened, then I feel like it's close enough to where, like, the person, the protagonists are characters that have some sort of unusual agency, that they're trying to, her sister's trying to solve the mystery of her death.
Right.
That is not unusual. I think that counts.
I was gonna say, like, this goes into one of our exceptions that we were talking about before, where like if there are experts or people that can handle it, they die. And we like Samuel L. Jackson gets eaten by a shark. Both the FBI agent and the bank robber die.
Someone who hasn't seen Jaws is really confused right now. Samuel Jackson was in Jaws. What was he, like 15, 10? All right, Bell. Yeah, I think that works. Yeah. All right. Okay. Does it stay with you, or is it just exhilaration in the theater? I think people are afraid of showers. I think that shower scene.
I am terrified of chocolate syrup.
Yeah. Then it goes more towards horror than at that point.
I don't think that. I think that's I don't think it works.
It's difficult to hear though. So much of even some of Hitchcock's thrillers stick with you that way.
Like Clear,
like
or Vertigo.
Like trains and birds and heights and
this might be a bad rule. We have to say that it didn't make it. No, I don't think so.
I don't know if it makes the rule, but I think I think something to note here would be that Hitchcock has a very, very powerful way of twisting this rule.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna do this. Halloween. Show of hands if you think it's a thriller. I'm not sure.
Really?
I'm not sure. Show of hands if you think it's a horror movie. We have unanimous horror movie, but I was very much on the fence.
4.5, yeah.
Yeah.
I vote for it as a horror movie because I think it's a horror movie. However, I also think it breaks every single one of these damn rules.
Well, let's find out. All right, number one, is the main characters, the protagonist, a normal person, or are they exceptional in some way? She is a baby. She's normal.
Yeah, she's absolutely a babysitter.
Lori is a normal babysitter. That's that is not. That is a horror movie thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, good. Yeah, Bell. Yes, hooray. All right, she is. Okay, cool. Do you leave the theater with terror in you, like fear of what's out there? I feel like this is a hard rule, but I do believe there is a visceral kind of fear of the shadow, fear of the leering, faceless person. I would say yes to this.
I would agree because I also feel like that definitely instilled at the time a fear of babysitting. I'm serious.
Fear of babysitting.
I think it definitely gave that whole like I'm a teenager watching kids alone in a house, and I think that if you watch that movie, you're going to go over, if you have a babysitting gig, you're going to feel that fear next time you're alone in the house with nothing but kids.
And the killer's going to find you in the closet.
Yeah. All right. Bell, that's another one. I'm surprised that this is working out so well. And the last one, are there plot twists? Is it mostly powered by plot twists and things like that? Or is it about like a more visceral, clear, straightforward...
Revulsion and horror.
Revulsion, horror, fear.
I think there's definitely a plot twist in there, but I don't think that's where I don't think that drives it.
Right.
I don't think that's the main thing.
I'll tell you what, I'm not a huge Halloween head. I haven't watched all the sequels and remember what's going on. I barely remember in the first movie what that twist was. I think he was somehow related.
It's her brother.
It turns out it's her brother? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I kind of remember that. Yeah. But I also didn't remember if that was one of the sequels.
But I mean, it's a big dude with a knife chasing everybody around. That's like how much scarier could it really get?
Yeah, it's a twist, but it's no more scary because the guy that's about to stab me is my brother? Well, that would have been weird. I guess.
Yeah.
I will say, like, it definitely has the revulsion factor. Like, when you stab, like, again, it's not like people never got killed, like, in their homes, or there was never a home invasion. Nobody got stabbed.
It's also not like anyone has not ever witnessed the president of the United States murdering somebody he was sleeping with. Come on. That was also from Jaws. Here, Bell, we got it. 3. All right. I'm pleasantly surprised that Halloween made it. I was actually very afraid. I thought there was, because there is a stalking element. There's like I could feel the thrills. It's realistic. There could be a killer with a knife who goes out and kills people.
Yes, before it got supernatural.
All right, Silence of the Lambs. Raise your hand if you think it's a horror film. Raise your hand if you think it's a thriller. All right.
For those who don't have eyes in the studio, that's a 5-0.
Yeah, that was a unanimous. All right, our rules. Is the protagonist a normal person, or are they a professional trying to unravel a mystery?
They're a professional
unraveling this, or Bell? Are they, again, is it a plot twist with many elements to it, or is it a thing of horror and revulsion? Is it something
Kind
to
of
be terrified?
both,
It's
but
a
I
little bit
think
of both.
I think it's mostly the puzzle.
Yeah.
I think the puzzle, it's definitely undercut by the puzzle of Clarice and what happened to her and her history and her relationship with Hannibal. And not so much just the puzzle of where is Buffalo Bill, but it is unraveling puzzles. It's not just the, man, serial killers are scary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So much. I feel like so much of the fear in Silence of the Lambs is in the psychological horror and the psychological relationship between Clarice and Hannibal. Maybe not so much Buffalo Bill, who's technically the killer, right?
Is it the psychological horror or the psychological thrill?
Well, that's the question.
I think, you would say horror unless we were using this example.
I also think a big denouncing of like the horror aspect of this is that while Hannibal is extremely creepy and bizarre, the character, knows that nothing bad would ever happen to her. He says like he makes sure that she knows that. Now while Buffalo Bill might,
I disagree with that.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, but
there's a scene in that movie where she talks about
yeah,
it.
but I don't know
I
how much you would
understand
believe
that,
Yeah.
but
But I'm saying,
it's
like-
how do you trust this guy?
I know, but what I'm saying is like I feel like some of that those horrific elements are removed to a certain extent because of that conversation, because
possible.
that was that scene.
It's possible. I can't imagine really like Dracula or Mike Myers or anybody having that conversation.
Actually, Dracula, I can totally imagine, but
I can, but I wouldn't imagine. Well, I guess I don't know.
Dracula is just a bad example. Frankenstein wouldn't, or
Yeah.
Frankenstein's monster wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he would have.
Well, no, depending on which. If you're talking Mary Shelley's Frankenstein,
Interesting.
Branagh.
Yeah, I feel like the psychological element that we were talking about is not like a psychological aspect of watching the movie, but more like the fact that it messes with your psyche after watching the movie, that it sticks with you forever. Where
That's
I
our
don't
next
feel
rule.
like people think a serial killer is going to come and kill them and try and wear their skin. After
Well,
watching
first
the
of all, let's give ourselves the bell for the it being mostly about unraveling that mystery,
Yeah.
and not so much about the horror.